6-0.
Retzloff gun. Takes the helmet high snap. Short drop. Launch for the end zone. Kingston there. Kingston touchdown! Parker Kingston hauls it in!
The Cougars are undefeated, nationally ranked, and stand at the top of the Big 12. Tonight, BYU defends Lavell's house against a hungry team from Oklahoma State.
They're the Big 12 conference runner-up. A great team with a lot of great coaches, and so we know they're going to be ready for this game.
This is KSL's special extended pregame coverage, brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. BYU, Oklahoma State. Our hosts are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
6-0 doesn't happen very often for the number 13 ranked BYU Cougars, who have another test tonight against Oklahoma State, looking to go to 7-0. Extended BYU pregame is sponsored by UCCU's Home Affordability Tool. Know exactly how much home you can afford. UCCU, love where you bank.
This is a big one, Mitch. BYU has never beaten Oklahoma State. Cowboys are reeling a bit. Big opportunity for the number 13 team in the country.
Huge game, and they're all big when you're the undefeated team and number 13 in the country like BYU is. 6-0, already bowl eligible, but they're looking for more. As you heard last week, after they took down Arizona, players were talking about national championships. And look, Cougar fans listening to this, they might be thinking, what? They're getting a little bit too carried away, but this team is dreaming big, and every single week you stack up the wins, and you're going to be in a position to have everything in front of you. But tonight's game against Oklahoma State is an important one because Oklahoma State, even though they're down and out, 0-3 in Big 12 play for the first time since 2005, this program is coming off a bye week. A lot of uncertainty about who they're going to play at quarterback, kind of what's the health status of this team. Yet Mike Gundy, everyone knows that name in college football.
Oh, yeah.
Mike Gundy is a well-versed coach when it comes to success. He doesn't know anything but success in college coaching, and he has a lot of success, too, as an underdog against ranked teams and also coming off bye weeks. He, looking in some of the archives of his performances coming out of byes, him and his staff, they dial up a lot of creative looks that throw teams off guard. So Jay Hill, Aaron Roderick, they better be ready for this matchup and not take this team lightly. I don't believe they are, but Oklahoma State poses some challenges and mystery that BYU hasn't faced in many of their opponents yet this season.
To me, this is the type of game where BYU solidifies themselves as a legitimate Big 12 championship contender, or, if they lose, I don't think they're going to. We'll get to our picks in a little bit, but if they lose or they struggle, then you have to wonder, with some road games coming up, is BYU going to be able to navigate this? This is a really interesting matchup because on paper, Mitch, BYU is significantly better than Oklahoma State. But can they get it done? There's the bad weather. There's the bye week, which you just referenced. And there's also just the weirdness of these games. BYU has won some of these games when they've been in Oklahoma State shoes. Think back a couple years ago, a bad weather game. I remember being in the stands when Boise State came in, and BYU, they're reeling a bit, like Baylor Romney's starting. What's going to happen here? They're pulling out trick plays. Matt Bushman is like faking falling down and catching touchdown passes. They win that game. They spoiled a trip for Boise State to potentially go to the playoff that year. If memory serves me right, that was the only Boise State loss, and that kept them out. So you can't let that type of thing happen. It helps that it's at home, but this is an interesting challenge in that BYU's better, but are you going to decisively beat this Oklahoma State team? And maybe a few more of us are even bigger believers about the future potential of this team.
It's a great spot for BYU to be in. It's a national showcase game on a Friday night. Friday night games in college football have experienced a little bit of a revival as far as interest and viewership goes. So this should be a huge stage for BYU to maybe really showcase to people who they truly are and what, how good of a team this is, because, I come away after that game last week against Arizona feeling like BYU's the best team in the Big 12. And I know Iowa State's ahead of them, and they're undefeated too, and they're playing some great football defensively, and they've got a young group, core players. But BYU is sound across the board, and I just think there's still – what's exciting is that BYU has yet to play its best football. They haven't peaked yet. There's still room to grow, particularly on the offensive side. And, earlier this week on Cougar Nation, which we host every Monday from 6 to 7 here on KSL News Radio, where we interact with the fans on Cougar Nation, we were talking about our MVPs, and you noted Jake Retzloff. And you know what? 5 weeks ago, I think a lot of Cougar Nation would have said, no way, get Gary in. Now it's Jake is thriving, and he's so comfortable. He had another solid performance, turnover-free a week ago. I think he's going to get better in the second half of the season.
That's a great point. And you look at the Big 12 quarterback play right now, who has decisively been better this year than Jake? Because you'd probably say Avery Johnson, but
Shadur Sanders
has been better. Avery Johnson maybe by a hair, but Jake beat him head-to-head.
Yep. Jake
just outdueled Noah Fafita, who a lot of people had as a top 3 quarterback in this league. There's not a lot of guys playing better football at the quarterback position than Jake right now. And you look ahead, Jake is clearly better than anyone Oklahoma State has. Jake is better than anyone UCF has. I like Jake better than what's going on at Utah. I think he's played better than Jalen Daniels. He's played better than Arizona State's quarterback, and they're having a nice year, but he's been better than Sam Leavitt, statistically speaking. And he's clearly better than anyone in Houston. BYU is getting top 3, top 5, certainly quarterback play at the position in the conference right now. And that's a big reason why BYU is 6-0, Mitch.
And he's got to be licking his chops, Jake has to, because he's going up against an Oklahoma State team tonight, 109th nationally in passing yards allowed. They gave up 258 yards per game through the air. This Oklahoma State team doesn't have an identity right now. You would have thought it would have been Ollie Gordon. We'll get to more of Oklahoma State a little bit later, but Jake Retzloff's got a chance. I think he's got a great story that for the casual sports fan gets them interested. How cool was that
game day piece? Did you see that?
It was great. And, he had a big performance on Yom Kippur. And, Jake, we spoke to him moments after he signed with BYU. We spoke to him on Cougar Sports Saturday. It was in the winter of 2023. And he noted that, not being LDS didn't faze him by going to BYU, because even then, in January 2023, before he really took a class at BYU, he spoke with us, and he said something to the effect of, great quarterback play has always been here at BYU. And he was inspired by the legends before him. And you think about 6-0 start, you would think, oh, Steve Young's done that. Jim McMahon's done that. Ty Detmer's done that. No, none of those guys, the legends, the Mount Rushmore of BYU quarterback play, those guys have not done what Jake is doing this year with this BYU team. The only guys that have been 6-0 in a BYU season, Mark Wilson, Robbie Bosco, Brandon Doman, Max Hall, Zach Wilson. That's it. And all 5 of those guys either got drafted or played snaps in the NFL. It's a high bar. He's an elite company right now, and Jake deserves his credit for what he's accomplished this season. And he's gotten so much better because even critics like myself who were, believed in him but said, you're not performing. And there's a capable option with Gary Bohannon, but he rose to the occasion. He heard probably the criticism, and that fueled him, and he got better. And he just went to work, and he's playing well right now for BYU. He's playing at a high level, and that gives BYU hope that they can win a Big 12 title.
It really does. And he's on pace for about 2,900 yards. He'd throw for 28 touchdowns, 10 picks. Those are good numbers, Mitch. They're not Heisman numbers by any stretch of the imagination, but those are numbers that can win you a Big 12 championship. We were there last week under the East bleachers where BYU does their post-game media interviews. Jake was the last to speak, and I came away insanely impressed with how he spoke to the media, how he credited his teammates, how he seemed, Mitch, to be much more comfortable. He's clearly taken on a leadership role. He's more confident in that now. That matters to me because you can't be a great quarterback in college football if the team doesn't believe in you. We had Crew Wakely on Cougar Nation earlier in the week, and he shouted out Jake Retzloff for overcoming some early adversity. Defensive players are believing in Jake Retzloff. That matters, and that really gives me hope that this team can do something special this year because They've got a great defense. We know that. They have tremendous depth defensively. We've already seen it. But now you're starting to get consistent, turnover-free quarterback play. The team is buying into this guy. This is a lot of fun. And like you said, offensively, we haven't seen their best football yet. Think about that. They're 6-0. They've got loads of room to improve offensively. If they can reach that potential, because we saw some run game as well. The run game was improving. LJ looked good. This is a great place to be, and the schedule gets softer too. So this is a great place for BYU.
BYU, I think the only thing that makes people worried, I think from the outside voices, and there's some national pundits who are picking Oklahoma State to play spoiler here. It's because the Big 12 is just crazy. You expect the unexpected in this league because there's so much parity, but I just think that what we've seen so far from BYU, they're dominating teams. They dominated Kansas State. And yes, I know you had a wild 5-6 minute stretch that just swung the momentum.
They forced those turnovers.
Exactly. And you have to be talented. You have to have athletes that are legit Power 4 players to make those plays. Like Isaiah Glasker last week was phenomenal.
He's amazing.
He was the National Defensive Player of the Week against Arizona. And 2 years ago, Matt, I don't think any of us could have pictured a BYU defensive player earning National Defensive Player of the Week. That would not have been in our thought process, that possibility from the lows that BYU hit 2 years ago. They've come a long way. This program's faced adversity along the way, and that adversity has made this team a close-knit group, and it's another chance. Statement number 7 tonight, BYU, Oklahoma State, kickoff, 8:15. We're getting you ready with extended pregame coverage. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte, more next here on KSL News Radio.
BYU, Oklahoma State.
Touchdown! Parker Kingston throws to LJ Martin on the double throw, and the Cougs take the lead.
Special extended pregame coverage on KSL News Radio.
BYU, Oklahoma State. Extended pregame rolls on here on KSL News Radio. Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. We host Cougar Sports Saturday, noon to 3. We'll be live tomorrow, so make sure to tune in. We'll get full reaction of tonight's game between BYU and the Pokes. We also host Cougar Nation Monday nights, where we take your phone calls, react to every BYU football game. Appreciate all of you who have already subscribed to the podcast and listen every week. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to do that, because we talk BYU sports all the time. We are breaking down BYU sports here on the legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio. And there's no better time to talk BYU football right now than when the Cougars are at the midway point of the season and they're undefeated.
13 in the country, Mitch. 6-0 start. It's just the 6th time in program history, and it's the 3rd under Kalani Sitake. Listen to this, and this is what I want you to marinate on, and then give me your honest thoughts. BYU is one of only 11 teams ranked in the top 30 in both scoring offense and scoring defense. They're scoring 34 points per game, allowing only 16. They're also 18th in the country in field goals made with 10. What statistical category has surprised you the most about this football team in 2024?
I'd say the scoring defense.
Really?
Just, it's so low. What was it? 15 points. 16 points, excuse me.
15th in the country, 16 points per game.
16 points. I mean, that's tough to do, because offenses are so good. I mean, and one of the teams they faced was SMU, who has put up big numbers since BYU defeated them in week 2. So to hold teams week after week to only 16 points on average, that's pretty impressive, because college football offenses can put up big numbers these days. And BYU's defense, I just think it continues to get better too. You know, because last year, Matt, we saw BYU have a big game against Arkansas, but it didn't lead to anything else. Where this season, you know who the stars are too. And I've loved the evolution of BYU's defense and finding key players. You're no longer seeing hockey subs. Like every week, you know, okay, Tyler Batty, Harrison Taggart, Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly, Jacob Robinson, becoming household names. Dudes that are legit every single week that are going to be key pieces to what BYU does. There were so many weeks in years past that, you know, oh, this guy got the start, this guy. And BYU would have these stats of they've started more players than anyone else in the country in games. No, that's not good. You want to just start your same 11 every single week. And that's a credit to they've been relatively healthy this season. So you're maintaining that high level of play. But I think just that scoring defense has really impressed me. What about for you?
I mean, defensively, it's hard to not pick the defense. I look at turnover margin. You're second in the Big 12, 11th overall. However, I do kind of feel like you and I and a lot of others thought that the defense would take a big jump. Like you were,
yeah, we did.
You're probably the conductor of the defensive line train. You were tooting that horn all off season long, and they have delivered for you and for Cougar Nation. They've been outstanding. To me, it's honestly the offense. They were so bad last season. And you look at some of their numbers right now, they're not a great offense by any stretch of the imagination. But I do think they are much improved, maybe even more so than we want to admit. You look at some of these numbers, they're top in the conference in passes intercepted, meaning they've thrown the least number of interceptions. That is
a good stat.
That's a fantastic stat. And that's coming from, look, you and I and Cougar Nation, we nitpicked at times about the mistakes with Jake Retzlaff.
Even Steve Young last week.
Steve, the swashbuckler. He's the swashbuckler. First in the conference in the least number of interceptions thrown. They're better than middle of the conference in passing yards. They are, and this is the number that really impresses me. Red zone offense, Mitch. They're 31st in the country. Yeah. They're top 5. Because a lot of fans like to discredit the offense by saying, well, the defense is giving them a short field. The defense is providing them great field position. Well, you still have to cash that in. And I was a little disappointed they didn't cash in that fumble that Harrison Taggart picked up. That led to a field goal. And I wanted more from that. They're 5th in the Big 12 in red zone offense. This offense, they're scoring points, man. They're 34 points per game? That is going to get you far. This defense with 34 points a game, taking care of the football and rushing well and throwing the ball well, that gets you to Arlington, man. So offensively, I just feel like everyone's expectations were so low. Look, raise your hand if you're listening in the car, you're driving to the game. Raise your hand if you thought Retzlaff would get benched at some point in this season. Mitch is raising his hand right here. There was a lot of you that thought that he was going to get benched and that he was no good. And now he's one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the Big 12.
It's impressive. And again, still room to grow. Third down conversion rate, that's an area I'm watching for tonight. And I know that third down is an interesting down for Aaron Roderick and BYU. And when they get on the opponent's side of the field, it's pretty much 4-down territory for them. But you do want to see that improve. Only 30% conversion rate, 124th nationally in college football. That's got to improve because at some point, we're going to see BYU have some close games. Hopefully it's not tonight. Hopefully BYU cruises to a comfortable victory tonight. But there's going to be a game that maybe we're not expecting. Maybe it's Utah. I don't know.
Could be tonight.
Where you have a close call down to the wire. And I'm thinking, and this is fresh in my memory from last week, hearing from Fox's Brady Quinn. He drew some parallels to BYU this year being TCU in 2022. And TCU that year had some big wins. They blew out Oklahoma early in the season. But then there were some close calls against Baylor. I remember you and I watched that game in the press box of a BYU game. And it just comes down to the wire, and it's a last-second field goal. They got to rush onto the field. I don't know if you need something that crazy, but you've got to be able to convert some third downs, stay on the field, get your offense in a spot to go win a ball game potentially. Again, hopefully it's not tonight. Because BYU, I feel confident saying this is a better team than Oklahoma State. And how crazy
Oklahoma
is that?
State would kill for some of BYU's offensive numbers.
How crazy is that to think only, 11 months ago, these two teams played, and Oklahoma State was a 3-touchdown favorite, and the roles have reversed completely. But, that's an area I want to see BYU improve. But I like where they're at, and I like, too, that you've got significant improvement in player development from Caleb Etienne. Braden Kimes playing some really good football right now. And, man, we haven't even talked about it yet. Bruce Mitchell at center. We'll see what happens tonight with Sonny Mocassini expected to be back. But to me, you go with the hot hand. You don't mess with that.
He didn't have a single bad snap against Arizona.
Right. You go Bruce Mitchell and put Sonny Makassini at right guard, or you go Austin Leausa. Don't tamper with that. That worked last week. You keep that going because Connor Pay will come back ideally for that Utah game. But keep going with Bruce because he played at a high level last week.
Bruce Mitchell was fantastic. It was nice to see that run game come to fruition. That is an area tonight that is going to be so interesting to me because the weather is not good. I mean, we enjoyed a great month of weather up to this point, but
so nice.
It turned on us fast. This means the run game has got to be working. You got LJ Martin back. He looked good. Falau Rapati, besides the fumble, he had the highest yards per carry of any running back last week. Sione Moa burst onto the scene against Kansas State. How do you balance all of this? If the run game can hit, that's another element that can still grow and become better.
And I want to see more of Sione Moa. Last week he was dressed, suited up, but it was a case they wanted to give him an extra week to heal, kind of like what they did with Rapati at Baylor. Look, I've said all along LJ's the number one, but Moa's got me interested, man, and what he can be. And I know that's tough for Rapati's a senior, and you want him to continue having success. And I love the burst he had out of the backfield last week. I thought Rapati looked good up until that fumble.
Yep.
But Moa's interesting because he did have Algier flashbacks.
He did.
It was nice against Kansas State.
He displayed the best shedding of tackles of any running back this season. And that,
no doubt.
That matters. When you can take a 2-yard stuff into a 7-yard gain, that's a game-changing play. That'll be fascinating to watch. The other thing that's so interesting, too, for this BYU football team is before the season began, Mitch, you looked at the schedule and you just felt like this is so hard. You're getting all these teams that are going to compete for a Big 12 championship. Oklahoma State, they're not competing. Kansas, not competing. UCF, out. Utah, out. And who would have thought Arizona State would still be in the mix at this point?
Right.
But you look ahead, and the Utah game is very winnable. Kansas and Houston, I think a lot of BYU fans, myself included, have already chalked that up as a win. So to be a great team, you do need some breaks. You rushed for that TCU team. They caught some breaks. Look, there's still half a season to go, but it does feel like this team is getting some breaks. You've had injuries, but then you have a bye week. You've had injuries. You find a way to win. You find a way to beat Baylor. So it's amazing how not only is this football team exceeding expectations, but also the external factors seem to be paving the way for you to maybe make a trip to Arlington. But tonight's one of those tests, Mitch, where just get the job done, avoid the landmine, and just get a win against Oklahoma State. Let's take a break. One more segment to go. We'll dive deeper into the matchup, some bold predictions, our score predictions as well. BYU, Oklahoma State, extended pregame rolls on right here on KSL News Radio.
6-0.
Retzloff gun. Takes the helmet high snap. Short drop. Launch for the end zone. Kingston there. Kingston touchdown! Parker Kingston hauls it in!
The Cougars are undefeated, nationally ranked, and stand at the top of the Big 12. Tonight, BYU defends Lavell's house against a hungry team from Oklahoma State.
They're the Big 12 conference runner-up. A great team with a lot of great coaches, and so we know they're going to be ready for this game.
This is KSL's special extended pregame coverage, brought to you by UCCU. Love where you bank. BYU, Oklahoma State. Our hosts are Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
BYU football game day is here on KSL News Radio. It's Mitch Harper, Matt Baiamonte with you. We're the hosts of Cougar Sports Saturday and Cougar Nation every week here on KSL News Radio. Saturdays for Cougar Sports Saturday, Mondays for Cougar Nation, where we take your calls and react to every BYU football game. Tomorrow should be pretty fun for us on Cougar Sports Saturday. We'll have live reaction to BYU, Oklahoma State. Kickoff tonight, 8:15 p.m. inside Lavell Edwards Stadium. We'll be inside the stadium with coverage on KSLSports.com and the KSL Sports app.
Today's extended BYU pregame is sponsored by UCCU's Home Affordability Tool. Know exactly how much home you can afford. UCCU, love where you bank.
Let's dive into this matchup a little bit more, Matt. BYU, Oklahoma State. BYU's riding high, 6-0, 3-0 in Big 12 play. Oklahoma State, though, 3-3, 0-3 in Big 12 play. First time they're on a 3-game losing streak in Big 12 play since Mike Gundy's first year as a head coach in 2005. Does BYU just cruise again in this one, or do you see this one being maybe closer than the experts think?
I think BYU cruises. There's something different about this team. There's a confidence, dare I use the over-cliched term, swag about this team. I love the way that this team is embracing the national spotlight and the expectations. They're not shying away from it. And I think that's an important thing because you work so hard to get to this point. If you just pretend like it doesn't matter, you're lying to yourself. Of course it matters. In every walk of life, you want to be appreciated. You want to be recognized for the work that you're doing. And those that can accept that and continue to put in the work, those people are successful. And I like that this team is embodying that, where it's, oh, we don't pay attention to this. Of course you pay attention to this. That's okay. Acknowledge it. Embrace it, but then continue to work. And we've seen that. They've passed a lot of tests already, Mitch. The Kansas State game was a big test. They passed that with an A+. Going down to Baylor, that was closer than it needed to be. But it's still on the road. It's hard on the road. They passed that test. Arizona comes in. I think a lot of people looked at that and said, this is a trap game. Arizona's physical. They've got playmakers. What are you going to do about that? Oh, well, they turned Arizona over 4 times. McMillan was held to 5 catches, and you comfortably beat that team. Arizona's better than Oklahoma State. The only wild card to this game is what kind of weather are we in for? Because that could throw a total wrench into this. But if it's just a little wet and a little cold, I think BYU will have their way with Oklahoma State. I'm not too worried about this game.
I think a wild card in this game, though, is Mike Gundy and his ability at coming out of bye weeks. He's just one of those guys from an X's and O's side of things. He's one of those head coaches that really gets into the weeds, dives into that. You just wonder if he's going to pull out something crazy. There is some uncertainty around Oklahoma State's quarterback situation. Alan Bowman, the starter, seems like he's going to get benched, but no official word yet. Garrett Rangel, he could be the guy that gets the nod tonight, or redshirt freshman Zane Flores. So they've got 3 quarterbacks as options. The Oklahoma State fans want Zane Flores, the redshirt freshman who's 6'4", kind of your prototype quarterback, looks to be the future, the next good one for Oklahoma State. But I don't think Oklahoma State has a strength right now. And the guy that you thought was going to be the strength of this team, Ollie Gordon, he got banged up 2 weeks ago against West Virginia. It's been kind of under the radar a little bit. That's going to be something I'm monitoring tonight inside Lavell Edwards Stadium, is how he looks in pregame warmups. The indication is that he's probably going to play, but Mike Gundy was radio silent when it came to any sort of injury updates this week. So, again, I think Gordon's probably going to play, but that's going to be an interesting tidbit to see how healthy he looks, because he did get banged up in that game against West Virginia. But, he was so brilliant last year against BYU. He was the Doak Walker Award winner, but he has, and that whole offense, they have struggled to generate any sort of ground attack. Their offensive line has been a mess this year. They're almost kind of inheriting the problems BYU experienced last season, but they've got a little bit more star power and proven coaches, where that's what makes it more surprising with Oklahoma State.
I'm not too worried about the rush defense. I think BYU's defensive line is really good. This linebacker group, having Harrison Taggart back last week was huge. That guy is a difference maker on the inside. I think he frees up Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker to do their thing. And so I'm really confident in his front 7. Here's an interesting stat for you, though, because there's so many juicy stats that paint an interesting picture. While we're on the topic of trench play, BYU's offensive line, I think we all can agree they're improved. Credit to TJ Woods, no doubt about it. That's been a slam dunk hire. He has unlocked Caleb Etienne, and he's got consistent play, but he's also, I think, developed more depth than we thought that this team had. Because I think going into the year, you would have said, you lose anybody, there's no depth. Listen to this. BYU's offensive line has only allowed 5 sacks in 6 games. That's with missing Connor Pay, missing Sonny Mikassini. You haven't missed the tackles, which has helped, having Kime and Etienne hold that thing down. But even Waylon Lapuaho has had a couple flashes of injury to only have allowed 5 sacks in 6 games with that kind of turnover, top 10 in the FBS, that's impressive, Mitch.
Think back to Big 12 Media Day. You and I spoke with Connor Pay, and he told us straight up, yeah, this is probably the least talented offensive line group I've been a part of. And it wasn't a knock on this group. It was just the lack of depth and the lack of proven NFL dudes. Last year they had Kingsley. Years before that, Brady Christensen, Blake Freeland. BYU's offensive line has suddenly been a pipeline to the NFL. There was no proven NFL dude on this year's line. Now they're becoming that. Connor Pay, when he gets back, I think he's got a chance to be an NFL player. ETN, absolutely. Because we always knew the measurables would get him a foot in the door with scouts. Now he's got great film. And that's what's going to give him a chance to play at the next level. It's exciting to see this offensive line succeed. And it's a great story that guys like Sonny Mocassini, once a walk-on, performing at a high level. Austin Leausa, a former Southern Utah transfer, he's performing well. Bruce Mitchell was a guy that, you thought, where's his career going? Defensive line, offensive line. History has shown when guys that bounce around between lines, that means they have no home. There's no identity for them. They have no place on the roster. No, Bruce Mitchell's just a guy he's
the next center.
Jack of all trades.
He's the next center.
And he can just do it all. Yeah. And now, yes, you're right. He's established himself to be that guy. He should be, because he was brilliant in a big game against Arizona. So that offensive line is performing at a high level, and I expect more of the same, because Oklahoma State, even more than their issues on the offensive side, they are bad defensively. One of the worst in the Big 12, and 129th in rush defense. They are struggling this season.
Who are a few players that you're going to be watching closely tonight?
For me, I'm really curious to see Chase Roberts. It feels like it's been kind of quiet on the Chase front.
Even though that touchdown catch was a masterpiece.
It was a great grab.
That's not an easy catch.
No, that 9-yard bullet coming in hot. But I just think that we're due for a big Chase Roberts game, kind of in the mold of Baylor for Darius Lassiter. And I know rainy weather makes passing the football a little bit trickier, but Jake Retzlaff's an aggressive guy. He's still going to put it through the air, and that's what BYU does. I want to see Chase have a big game because, Oklahoma State's pass defense has struggled too. Their secondary, they brought so much returning experience, but they've been banged up. They had some linebackers in the heart of their defense out for long period of time, and it's really affected their defense. I look at Chase as someone to have a big game. What about you?
For me, Falau Rapati, I just want to see, where does he fit in? Did the fumble bump him down the depth chart? Let's find out who can be the most effective running back. Score prediction time?
I'm going to go BYU 38, Oklahoma State 20.
I'm going to go BYU 31, Oklahoma State 17.
I think the Cougs get it done. Move to 7-0. Get ready for a big game next week against UCF. We'll have all the coverage. You can listen to the call right here on KSL News Radio, and then check out the online coverage on KSLSports.com. Big thanks to our producer, Nate Slack. For Matt Baiamonte, Mitch Harper. Enjoy BYU football right here on KSL News Radio.